Welcome to another segment of the program, and that's the way it was. This is a program sponsored by the Plymouth Historical Society, and we're filming tonight from the Plymouth Center in the Historical Museum. Our guest tonight is Dr. Roger Siegert, a veterinarian here in Plymouth for a number of years. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here, and I do go back to the early 50s as far as getting involved with Plymouth, and it's really a treasure to be here tonight in that it's at the Plymouth Center, and this is where the history occurs from our area and the surrounding area. And I can relate back to when you first came to town, how you became involved with the bed and breakfasts and the nice homes that you acquired, and that was quite an addition to Plymouth.
Thank you.
You bet.
Many different phases in a community's life. You were raised in the Howards Grove area, am I correct on that?
Well, evidently you've done some historical background on myself. Actually, my mother was born and raised in the Plymouth area. She graduated from Plymouth High School in 1927.
Okay, what was her name?
Her name was Laura Thomas.
Laura Thomas.
And there's quite a number of Thomases around the area. They're not all related, but she grew up between Sheboygan Falls and Plymouth, just off the old plank road. And I guess my early years of my grandfather, the Thomas family, had quite a bit of influence on me in that they were all animal lovers.
Oh, okay.
And at that time it goes back to the horse era, and it goes back to the fact that horses were used rather extensively.
Did they have farms then?
Yes, they did. And even today I have a brother, a nephew, and a brother-in-law and sister that farm.
Okay.
And they farm in the Howards Grove area. But
Not on the original Thomas farm?
No.
Okay, great.
The Thomas farm is still owned by the Thomases, but it's the land is rented out.
Okay.
Florence and Alan Thomas live on that farm.
Right. So then you went to school in Howards Grove?
Yes, I did. And
You and your wife were in the same class?
yeah, well, that's right.
Is
We
that right?
were, and we have an anniversary tomorrow, so
okay.
it's a milestone in our life. And
Which one is it, or what
it'll
is
be
it?
44 years tomorrow that we've been married.
They're married, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have to confess to you that my wife and I are in the same graduating class, too,
Oh,
from Pennsylvania.
yeah.
Yeah. And we'll be 42.
So what city?
About 10 days.
What city in Pennsylvania?
A little town called Oxford.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
Has nothing to
with
do with Oxford, England.
that. No.
So-
But anyhow, relating back to the history and to the city of Plymouth and the surrounding area, we are in the heart of Sheboygan County, and our relatives cover the entire Sheboygan County area. And when we did the country work, the service work in the veterinary field, we essentially covered Sheboygan County, along with northern Ozaukee County and southern Manitowoc County and eastern Fond du Lac County. So we had a large area, and that continues today with the Kettle Moraine Veterinary Center.
Now, when you, does your ancestors, can you trace your ancestors back, the Thomas family, when they came to the Plymouth area or on your other
I
side?
would tend to think that they probably came to the Plymouth area the late 1800s.
Did they come from
They
overseas?
came from overseas, from Germany.
Okay,
And we have some relatives from my grandmother's side, from the Thomas family, from the St. Cloud area.
okay,
And my grandmother was a Sass, and she went to the Lutheran school here.
okay.
And so our ties to the Plymouth area goes back a
So
lot of years.
You went to, where did you go to school then?
Okay, I went to school. My initial years, I went to Kohler's Graded School.
Oh, okay, cool.
We had lived over at Kohler, right where the sports core is now, and the Woodlake Markets. I still can relate back to some of the trees that are there.
There was a farm there at that point?
Yes, there were. 3 farms.
3 farms?
3 small farms. And my dad started out as a baker in Sheboygan, and he decided that I guess it wasn't challenging enough for him. He decided to go into farming.
Okay.
And the land in that Kohler area, my grandfather owned, my grandfather Thomas.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Kohler bought it from my family, my
Okay.
mother's side.
You'd like to have that back now?
Yeah, well, we get to enjoy it this way too, because we see how it grows and what it's used for. And
Yes, sir.
going back that many years, I can recall a veterinarian that used to come to our place, a veterinarian by the name of Dr. Arbke, and he was from Sheboygan. And my dad at that time, he was rather adventuresome, and he would raise draft horses. And then he used to train them to be able to handle them as far as pulling on the sled or the manure spreader. And I can recall some of the early years that the veterinarians would come out to castrate the male horses. And of course, there weren't any anesthetics in those days, so it was all muscle and ropes.
When did the veterinarian field start, or when did vets start to appear?
Well,
I can remember vets as long as I...
The veterinary field goes back to the biblical days, and that it relates back to the care of animals in those days. And by nature, it blossomed in the European countries, and that's where you had a lot of the pharmaceuticals developed too. And with the European countries, I include England and the surrounding area too, some of the other states in that area and countries. But modern medicine relates to the veterinary medicine very well today, in that many of the pharmaceutical companies, the biologic companies that make the human products, also make the veterinary products, such as Merck and Upjohn, and so we have a lot of good companies that support the growth of veterinary medicine.
Now, you brought this little statue in. This is you said the friendly doctor?
This is the gentle doctor,
The gentle
and
doctor, okay.
it's one of the things that relate back to the veterinary field, in that it relates to the fact that most veterinarians are rather compassionate, and most veterinarians like to take care of their animals as if they were people. And it relates to the fact that veterinarians are concerned about the welfare of animals. And contrary to what you hear today, that so many of the people seem to think that animals are abused by how they're housed and how they're handled, it's just not that way at all. In America, we are lucky in that the Americans really take good care of their animals. They give a lot of attention to the care, the husbandry of them, and also then what they do with them after the useful life ends. And I'm really happy for the people of our area here, because they've done such a good job breeding the animals and taking care of them. In the veterinary field, the one thing that veterinarians are really good at is nutrition.
Now,
And it relates back to the fact that so many of the animals were used for food production. So in order to grow them properly and to have them so that they would appeal to the consumer, nutrition is a major factor in what happens to these animals, as well as the breeding of them. Years back, if you recall some of the early pictures that you could see of the hogs and the cattle, they were pudgy and fat, and so the nutritional part was the fat of them, not the protein. Today, everything relates back to the protein.
when you were... let me come back to where did you go to vet school then?
I guess we got off of that subject. I went to Madison for my pre-vet. I went there from 1950 through 53. Then I transferred to Iowa State, because at that time...
Wisconsin doesn't have a vet school.
We do now.
We do now, okay.
And that was started in the mid-'80s. And so anybody that grew up in Wisconsin that had a veterinary interest and had a medicine liking to animals, it meant that we'd have to transfer out of state. And at that time, I could have gone to Michigan State, East Lansing, Michigan, Minnesota, University of Minnesota, or Wisconsin. And at that time, we had some reciprocity, meaning that the state would pay for some of it. That's correct.
Yeah.
And I chose Iowa State because we had relatives in Iowa, and the other thing, their tuition was the least.
It was favorable.
It was very favorable.
Reasonable.
Right. Being a country boy, being a farm boy, we didn't have any extra funds available.
So then you came to Plymouth right out of school?
Yes, that's an interesting story in itself. I had one other classmate that went into a practice by himself. It did not work for anybody else, did not start with anybody else, and that was a similar situation with my wife and I. We had two other communities selected, Sun Prairie and also Hilbert, and we chose Plymouth, and we couldn't have chosen a finer place to come to. Plymouth has been very good to us, and
So you started the the clinic then?
We started the clinic in 1957 from scratch.
Right. And where was that located?
That was located,
What building?
the place is no longer there, but near the root beer stand of Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried
Oh,
Chicken.
okay.
There was a little barn there, old house. It's all been demolished and removed.
Okay.
And we were there for several years. And I'm trying to think of the family that owned it, but Elroy Streblo, who did live on Bishop Street, he was the administrator of that. I think it was an estate at that time. And we used to keep some of the animals in the old barn.
Oh, okay.
And I started the practice in June of 1957. We never went a day without a call. And can relate back to some of the early calls that we made. Vilas Butler just passed away this week. That was the first place I went to for a hog
Oh,
call.
really? Okay.
He'd point that out to me rather frequently.
Yeah.
But we didn't specialize at that time. We took care of all the different species, the horses, the cows.
As well as the small animals.
Correct.
Right. Now, did you do artificial breeding as part of your service?
No, we did not. That didn't come in until the late 40s and early 50s, artificial breeding. But going back to that, as a farm boy raised north of Howard's Grove, my dad did artificial breeding. In fact, he had his own bulls. He'd collect the semen, he'd dilute it, freeze it, and then he'd make calls to the farmers. And some of these farms were in the Plymouth area, too. And my brother did that for several years also. So we got into the veterinary work through the artificial breeding, so that's probably a good question. It took some extra special considerations at that time.
That had to be quite a change going from the bull to the artificial. I mean, talking about something revolutionizing farming. I mean, how many farmers were killed by bulls?
Yes.
It was a very, very dangerous process.
That's correct, and you even hear some today that do get killed by bulls. And
or something really to be feared.
the other thing is that it reduced the amount of communicable diseases that were spread, such as leptospirosis, or some of the parasites too, trichomoniasis, and so it became a cleaner venture as far as the animals were concerned. It eliminated some of the reproductive diseases.
And that helped the offspring.
That's correct.
From that.
So the technology in farming has changed a great deal, and not only from the animal standpoint with the breeding and the different lines that you have and the different considerations. We just had a major show in Plymouth at the fairgrounds this last month. It was the Wisconsin Holstein show, the stage show, and you could just tell the quality of animals, the breeding part of it all, the registration and the selection of the animals was shown that particular week because the animals were really high quality. And what they look at primarily then is the production levels and then also the conformation. There's a breed standard that they follow. And of course, the neat thing about that is the veterinarians like to work on good animals, and most of the intricate works are done on some of the better pedigreed animals. And veterinarians, of course, take care of all of them, but the challenges, I think, came, and I can relate back to that, came at the big farms because that's where you do the major.
Things.
In 1961, we did our first displaced abomasum surgery. This cows have multiple stomachs, and went to a convention in New York. Ohio State University put a demonstration on in a downtown Hilton.
With a cow.
With the cattle. They trucked in cattle, and they had the live animals there. And today, I guess you wouldn't get it done anymore. But in fact, we had my folks along, and it was really neat. And then it's funny how things come back to you as you go along through life. We did the first operation in 1961, and that was a milestone. And the person that built our home just a year ago, he recalled that was the place where we did the first operation.
Oh, really?
At his farm. That's right.
He remembered that. Huh?
He remembered that.
Right. As you were in your career, after you left the first building near where the Colonel Sanders is now located. Did you go down to Pleasant View? Was that your next stop?
That was our next stop on
Pleasant View and
Pleasantville.
Eastern Avenue.
Correct.
And
then
there you built a very large facility?
we didn't have a large facility. We had the home with the office, and it continued that way till 1995. There's advantages to that, and there's disadvantages to it, but the thing about it was a low overhead operation, and Barb assisted me.
Right. Does she have a medical background?
She does not, other than the fact that at Iowa State they had night classes for the wives-to-be.
Oh, okay.
And then she was taught some of the
Little
restraint.
orientation period there.
She did, yeah. And then she got a degree after that was done putting hubby through.
Oh, okay.
So I'll never forget that.
That's right.
And we had our 40th reunion last year. I graduated 40 years ago, so I am from a different era. And we were having a classmate and his wife come up for the fair and for the Packer game this year.
Okay.
And this is a Dr. Steckelberg. We were in the labs together a lot, Siegert Steckelberg. So we've had really good times together, and we're going to relive some of that this coming fair time.
The practice near the end, I think you were telling me one time, became more of the small animal. You got away from the farm calls.
That's correct.
And what brought that about?
I practiced the large animal medicine for 22 years and put a lot of miles on me, and I developed a physical handicap in that my shoulders gave out, and even today I have to watch what I do. And I was lucky enough I went to the Milwaukee Brewer physician, knowing that I had a shoulder problem. Actually, it was bilateral, like both of them. And the advice he gave me was to discontinue the large animal medicine. He said my shoulders are wore out.
There was a lot of tugging and pulling.
Oh yeah, going back these many years, going back to the late 50s, early 60s, we did not have the drugs that they have today.
Right.
We did not have the tranquilizers. We did not have the anesthetics. And as a result, as I related, as this horse pull shows, and we relied on lariats, and we did a lot of cowboy work. We were cowboy veterinarians.
Yeah.
So it took its toll.
Yeah.
I have a lot of scars to prove it. I was kicked and bit. And
A few other things along the way. Huh?
that's right.
And you don't miss the long rubber gloves then as much.
No, but that's the trademark of the veterinarians. You never see a veterinarian chew his nails for fear there might be some contamination there. Not only that, veterinarians always walked with caution. We always looked where we stepped.
You were kind enough to bring one of your tools of the trade, and you mind telling us what that's about?
Yes, I could.
I did clearly identify it for the show.
We have here a balling gun. It's a tablet pusher, and you can't see the tablet size, but anyhow, this would be for the horse and cattle size. We had smaller balling guns for the horses and the kitties too. This, of course, has some scars on it. I did retrieve it. It does have some character to it. There's some scratches on it, and this is not the first one. We wore out many of these. But anyhow, a lot of the medications that we had years back were done with the boluses or the tablets. And this would have been the horse or cattle size bolus. And I had some at home, but I couldn't find them. And
You would put the pill in the...
we'd put it in here, and then this part would force it out. Once we had this back in the pharynx area, we would then push
in the mouth. You'd open the mouth of the animal
and they weren't
and
always
stick it all the way down, and they weren't happy to see it come up. Like a little bit like a dead Glenette Dennison, you see that needle coming on you.
You bet. And some of these animals knew when you were coming. They did have some intelligence. Even sometimes when you came with the syringe, they could anticipate that. So they weren't all.
What was your most unusual farm call? Is it something really comical that sticks out in your mind, or?
Well, yeah, we had different farm calls throughout the day, of course, and going back to the early 50s, we did not have that many veterinarians around. We had Dr. Johnson, who's still alive, and still lives in Plymouth. He's 95, I do believe, or 96, and we're going to have a veterinary gathering now in September, so I hope I get to see him again. But I'm sure he would have even more ancient stories to tell. But relating back to some of the unusual calls, I guess there are many of them, but scientifically a little bit, we had a chronic bloater at Lakeside Farm. This is a farm in Elkhart Lake, and high-quality cattle. And he had this chronic bloater that we didn't know what to do. This is where the gas accumulates in cows, and they can actually get the pressure built up to where they can no longer breathe and they die. This particular one just wouldn't eat well because the food didn't agree with it, and some of that is hereditary and congenital. But anyhow, we had a Bauer engineering person out just north of town, and Mr. Heisen had this person make a pressure release valve that we had to put in this animal. And it was funny because this Mr. Bauer could not take blood, or he could not take a lot of undesirable odors. But anyhow, we got the job done and it worked. It was a pressure release gas device that we embedded into the rumen of this cow.
So how long did that stay in?
That stayed in then for about 1.5 years until it became an adult. This was done more as a yearling heifer, as a year-old. And the funny thing about it is we took it out again and sewed it all up and got it to the point where it could use its digestive system properly. And it was of such good quality, this animal was sold to the Japanese for $200,000.
200,000?
200,000, yeah.
You should have bought more pressure gauges. Pressure relief.
So I don't know what happened to the pressure release valve. If I would have it, I would have brought it along.
Here's the key. That's the key a lot of farmers have been looking for, how to make that work. On the finances, how were you paid? Did you have problems collecting in these periods of time, or did you get into a barter system? Or
well, we had both. We had a little bit of everything, and going back that many years, I can relate back to Mrs. Schrader that was just down from the barbecue. She talked a little bit about their early monetary involvements, and our first farm call that I made was $5. That included everything, getting there, and then
no service charge.
I look back, just no service charge. This included the drugs, the medication, everything. And then the other thing is dogs. Our first dog that we spayed was $7 total. In other words, this was the anesthetic, the surgery,
everything,
the stitch removal, the whole ball of wax.
Your time, everything.
Everything. So it's come a long ways, and the modernization of medicine has helped animals a lot because we really did sort of abuse them to some degree years ago. We relied on the muscle power.
Is there one medicine that's been developed during your career that sort of really propelled things and really made major advancements? And
yes,
I mean, like penicillin was such a tremendous find years ago, and that type of thing.
Unbelievable. Penicillin was just an unbelievable medical advance, and even today penicillin is used a lot. Contrary to what you hear about the sensitivities that people have, sensitivities animals have, but there's lots and lots and lots of penicillins that are made today. And I use the word penicillins because they do make synthetic penicillin today, and then it goes by different trade names, but it all relates back to the original penicillin. And so the scientific improvement of these preparations has been really upscaled to a high degree.
What is the common problem with the cow? I mean, what would cause most of the problems? Is it mastitis?
Well, in the dairy industry, you're right. There it would be the mastitis because of the high production of milk, and that's the most sensitive organ that they would have.
And what causes that?
There are multiple reasons. They can be traumatic, or there could be the irritation of the automatic milking machine, or then what comes in there, we have the staph and the streps, the different types of bacteria that you hear about, and even yeast. And it's just dramatic, though, how that gets handled. I went to the Farm Progress Show over at the Walter Seymour's farm in Antwal County a year ago, and with their advanced systems, the milking system, it's done with magnetic tapes. They identify the cows, and this particular milking system can predict when these cows are going to come down, when they're going to acquire this mastitis before they get it. It's amazing.
I can't help but remember being around a farm most of my life, or a good part of it when I was young. The method of milking and having all that milk in open buckets with the flies swarming around on top. And today, where nothing really gets outside of the milking machine right to the milk
You bet.
cooler.
Everything gets better. The refrigeration gets better. The method of milking gets better. The housing gets better. The animals get better.
And
The
no-
people that take care of them get better.
There's no more hernias from lifting those heavy milk cans out of that water-filled cooler.
That's right.
I mean, that was, you talk about something that would break your back, that was it.
Yep,
And then have to lug them to town.
sure.
Okay.
And you ask about the advance in medicines, what particular medicine. Penicillin was a big one, of course, but I think the anesthetics, the tranquilizers, and the related preparations that are used
Was
to
kindness to the animal,
the
wasn't it?
kindness to the animals, the welfare of the animals, greatly improved, and that goes back. That goes back probably to the early '60s and maybe some of the late '50s. But we have remarkable preparations today that can be used to make the comfort of the animal just a whole lot better. I don't think there's really a lot of animal abuse anymore. Not like we used to see it years back.
Okay. This is going to wrap up this segment of the program, and that's the way it was. And you can stay tuned for other segments of the show by checking the Plymouth Review or calling Channel 3, and the phone number Channel 3 for the scheduling of the program would be 893-0006. I want to thank you, Dr. Siegert, for
Well, I'd
coming
like to
in
come
and sharing-
back. I mean,
sharing.
we just
got
barely got started.
I think I'll have you teamed
How
up.
better prepared
I think
next
I'll have
time.
you teamed up with Ozzy Pick with baseball. That would be a good session.
No, Ozzy,
Really have
well.
a good round the house discussion here.
Sure.
Anyway, thank you very much for appearing on the show with us.
Happy to be here. Pleasure.